take it from there. In terms of intros, very pleased to have Liberty Mutual support today. A little bit of background on Liberty Mutual. They provide commercial and specialty insurance, surety, and reinsurance solutions in geographies globally. Want to thank Bob Thomas, who is one of our board members, who is an avid supporter of Spencer. And with that, I'm going to introduce our two speakers here today. Vishnu, who has a data science background, Jose, who's focused on campus recruiting. They're going to do a deeper dive on their backgrounds as well. But with that, Jose, I'm going to turn it over with you to kick it off. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ken. Well, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're logging on from today. My name is Jose Mendoza, like Ken mentioned, and I work with the Early Talent Acquisition Group and Programs here at Liberty Mutual. And we thought we'd kick off this session today just with a quick overview. Also talk a little bit about early talent programs, and then we'll pass it over to Vishnu, who's going to talk about data science at the company. So to get things started, we have some quick facts about our company. We have 50,000 employees globally with $50 billion in revenue. We're currently 86 in the Fortune 100, and we have employees in 29 different countries. So I think it's always special. I work with the Employee Resource Group, and I always meet colleagues from all over the world. I'm based out in the Boston office, which is always great to kind of connect, speak with some employees who speak Spanish. And we're currently the fifth largest global property and casualty firm. So we're actually certified as a workplace where everybody, really thrives. We've won a numerous of different awards, kind of kicking it off with the best employees for diversity, employees for women, for, early talent as well. One of the most recent awards that we just won in 2023 is actually, I have it right here. It's our Handshake Early Talent Award. So you must have heard about Handshake on your campuses. We were just named as one of the top employees for that. So kind of supporting our undergrad and grad student programs that we have here at the company. And we're constantly winning different awards as well to kind of showcase what we're doing with our employees and also attracting new talent into Liberty. Like I mentioned, we're a global company, but based out in the US. We have some main hub offices that we call, kind of kicking it off with Seattle, Washington, Indianapolis, Plano, Texas, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and then our headquarters is based out of our Boston location. So that's where I'm based out of as well. And then wanted to kind of bring a little bit more into our business here at the company. So we start out with our global risk solutions, what we call GRS. This is a group that delivers a full range of innovative risk solutions to businesses worldwide. Then we have the US retail markets. This is more like that personal line, business line. So kind of you think about our home property, our auto insurance, kind of like the everyday person. They kind of have the business with us. We also have the Liberty Mutual Investments. So they manage our capital and they're enabling our company to help our partners and customer kind of confidently pursue tomorrow. And then our last one is our corporate department. So that's where I kind of sit out of in the HR, working with the brand group, finance group, et cetera, technology. So these four groups are our main businesses here at the company. And, when we ask our current employees, what are some common themes that they, kind of like about the company, why they're constantly here, why do we get new employees as well? These are our common themes that kind of come up all the time. Kicking it off with cutting edge technology, we have a team that's always dedicated in finding new innovative ways to implement new technology into the company. I work with the claims group a lot, and one of the cool things that they're currently doing there is utilizing drones, kind of looking into, home damages and kind of making it easy for our employees to do a 360 view of a home. And I kind of find that cool that they're utilizing drones to kind of do that research and analyze as well, kind of take pictures from that level. Then we have diversity, equity, and inclusion. I talked about our employee resource group. We have about 8 of them here at the company. I'm a member of Amigos, which is for our Latinx and Hispanic employees and allies. We also have a bunch of other ones called LIDA for our Black and employees and allies. We have ABLE, We, Women Empowerment, etc. And we do a lot of work to really support our employees that come from different backgrounds, but also support our allies to be able to what we call be on that learning journey, be able to understand how they can be an ally as well and continue to support employees from different backgrounds, which is one of the things that I truly love about the Liberty Mutual. Career mobility is also another one. It's very common to kind of hear a person start in one area, 5, 10 years be in a different area. So kind of having that opportunity to really continue to grow as a professional. We have flexible work arrangements, so being able to work from the office, but have an opportunity to work from home as well. Competitive compensation, we always do a market analysis every year to kind of see how that market's doing and making sure that we're staying competitive as well. And then stability as one of our last on themes as well. And we have opportunities in many different areas for early talent. So again, this is for undergrad students, grad students as well, starting out with actuarial, analytics, claims, finance, et cetera. These are some of them. We have much more as well. So I thought I'd highlight them here. And in the next slide, we have a little bit of a timeline into when we open up applications. So this is perfect timing. We're currently in August. So that means that next month, we're going to be opening up our applications for all of those different programs that I called out. We recommend students to definitely apply between September and October. So kind of getting the chance to learn about the program, getting the application ready, etc. And our interviews take place between October and February with our full-time or internships program starting in May and July. And I have the website right there, lmi.co undergraduate. This is for our undergrad early talent board, but we have the same one for our graduate folks. It's just graduate on there. So we thought that we kind of share this quick timeline into when we open applications, kind of review them. So mark your calendars. A couple weeks from now, we're definitely going to be opening up those applications. So this was definitely a good timing for you all to kind of connect with Liberty Mutual today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose. I believe we're turning it over to Vision now.
Yep, Vishnu, here you go. I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Vishnu Narayanasamy. I am a Senior Director of Data Science at Liberty Mutual. I've been with Liberty Mutual about 8 years now. And some of the things Jose talked about, I've lived that. So I've been in 2 of the 3 departments or the divisions that Jose talked about. I've had multiple different roles within the company. I am an active member in several of our employee resource groups. I am part of the Pride ERG employee resource group, which is a group for LGBTQ plus folks, and I'm an active ally in the Women at Liberty group as well. So everything that Jose had talked about, I see it, live it every day. So wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of that. So the next 30, 40 minutes, I'll talk more about kind of data science and how we think about data science, how we use data science at Liberty, give you a flavor of types of things we are working on and we do. So interactive, please ask questions, and hopefully this is useful for you to think about and also learn more about Liberty Mutual. So I thought we will get started. If you go to the next slide with a quiz, because what better way to start a presentation than pop-up quiz. So I see about 20 people in our call. So I would love for folks to guess, again, just guess, or if you can do the math in 20 seconds and guess, and say, what is the likelihood that we have a shared birthday in this group of 20 people? So give it, I guess, like a minute for some guesses to come in, and then I can show you what the real answer is. I see 1 in 100, so 1%. 20 out of 366. I got to do the math on that one. Make sure I can get a percentage number.
I was waiting for you to do tough math on the top of your head.
That's about 5%. 1 in 250, that is much less than 1%. 3%. See a few more guesses. We have 20 people, so I'm hoping we can get a 0.5%. 1 in 500. Any other 40%? 10%? Anyone, any other guesses? All right, so more 10%. Believe it or not, the answer is about 41%. It's very counterintuitive. I'll walk you through that now. We can actually spend the next 20 minutes going through everybody's birthday and figure out who are the 2 people who have the same birthday, but let's just go through that. So Jose, if you just click through the slide. So this is the reason I bring it up. I'll talk about it in a second. So this basically here, I kind of walk you through what if a 4 people is the example I'm using here. So the way we think about it is it's a probability question. What you find out is try to figure out what is the probability that 2 people don't share a birthday. In this case, it's the orange and the red person. That's about 364 out of 365 chances that they don't share a birthday. Then you do that with the third person, and then you do that with the fourth person. Then you multiply the 3 probabilities, and then what you get, and what you then get is basically, for if a group of 4 people are there, then there is a 1.6% chance that there is a shared birthday in that group. In our case, it's about 20 people, now 21 people. So that chance goes up pretty dramatically. And if you do this whole math for about 21 people, what you get is about 41, 44%. So Jasmine, who guessed 40, is the closest. She wins by prices right rules. I have no prizes, but you get bragging rights. So if you go to the next slide, so the reason why I did this is to give you an idea of like what data science is, right? So data science is basically a combination of, I'm making it much simpler than it is, but just to give you a high level overview or like a understanding of kind of how I think about it. It's a combination of 3 things. It is a combination of mathematics, computer science, and domain expertise, right? So in this case, insurance for us is the domain expertise. The example that you saw is a classic example of what I would call data science, right? So it involves probability, which is pure math. Then if you're doing it for 500, 600, like a large number of people, you can't do the calculations just by hand with a calculator or even an Excel spreadsheet. So you need to know computer science to make sure that you can build these kinds of complicated or sophisticated mathematical models. And then you need to have domain expertise. In this case, the domain expertise is that you just need to know that there are 365 days in a year, and then use that in your calculation. So it's an insurance that's the domain expertise. It's like you think about how do you price it and all those kinds of things. So that's kind of the domain expertise. So data science is like an amalgamation or the intersection of these 3 things, and that's kind of what we do. And my experience is it is a lot of fun. So we go to the next slide, Jose. So if you think about how we use data science, we use data science across the spectrum insurance value chain. So right from when we develop a product, when we sell products, when we underwrite risks, customer service, claims management, operations, all of these things use data science. And the slide here has some of the questions we use data science to answer, right? So we think about, hey, is this prospective customer likely to be a better risk, and therefore should we give them a discount? Or is this property that we are insuring have any risk factors, and therefore should we send someone to physically inspect the property before we write it? Is this claim that I get going to be fraud, and therefore I have to be careful when I am adjusting this claim? All of these are questions that we face every day when we work in insurance, and we use data science to solve a lot of these questions. If you go to the next slide, I'll just talk about stuff you might have heard about in either in your schoolwork or just in general reading through articles in newspaper and magazines and whatnot. There are lots of different techniques in data science, and we'll talk more about some of the newest things that everyone's talking about these days, like ChatGPT and whatnot towards the end. But if you think about the types of data science techniques out there, several are available. This is an example of, I have 3 things that we talk about, and we use all of them. Supervised learning, that's basically a type of data science techniques, a group of techniques where you have a big data set where you have everything is clean and neat, and you say, here is what it is, and here are we're going to give you an example from claims, because I work a lot in claims. So we'll basically say, here are about 1 million claims, about 50,000 of these claims are very expensive. And so we will train a model to understand what makes a claim expensive, and then use that to predict future claims to figure out which claims are going to be more expensive in the future. So that is called as supervised learning. Supervised there means that I know which one is expensive, and therefore I'm going to use the machines to understand what makes them expensive. So that's type 1. Type 2 is what we call unsupervised learning. Unsupervised learning is basically a situation where I'll say I'll give the models a bunch of data and say, hey, here is all I have. I don't know which one is like one another, which one is different, which one is not different. So can you tell me how many various groups exist in this data set? So we basically let the model basically figure out kind of how to group customers, or like how to group claims together, so that we can use that for analysis purposes. So that's unsupervised learning. And then reinforcement learning is another technique where we again let the model do it, do the unsupervised learning, but then we go tell the model actually what you did is right or wrong. And so then the model takes feedback from the human and then corrects itself and tries to correct itself and updates itself, reinforces. So it's what we call reinforcement learning. These are all different types of techniques, a lot of different companies use, right? As we go work at, like, talk to people, data scientists in Amazon and Uber, in any kind of field, in banks, all of them use all of these kinds of techniques, and these are very popular even in our space, in the insurance space as well. If you go to the next slide, Jose, please. I'll give you a couple of examples of how we use data science in our work to make it real for you, right? So in the realm of, so example about supervised learning example I talked about, personal auto insurance. So I'm sure if you folks have car, you will have an auto insurance, car insurance. And one of the things that we use supervised learning techniques there is to understand how historical driver characteristics and driving behaviors have contributed to the risk of a certain driver, and therefore use that to come up with what we think is the best premium for any given risk, right? So that's what I would consider a supervised learning model. Like, as you'd imagine, the more miles we drive, the risk goes up, and at the same time, the safer your driving behavior is, your risk goes down. And so we take all of these accounts into perspective when the model basically comes up with the risk score for a certain driver, right? So that's an example of supervised learning model. Go to the next slide. Unsupervised learning model, this is another method I talked about. So I think I mentioned an example. So in this case, usually used for what we call anomaly detection, like when we have to find, when you're trying to find needles in a haystack type of problems, we will use these kinds of techniques where we will we will ask the model to say, hey, here is all the information. Can you find which claims don't look like other claims? So it's like we're not telling it what to look for. We just say which ones look alike and which ones don't look alike. And therefore, we'll try to see how the model is separating them into different categories. So it's called clustering algorithms. We do that often. So in this case, for example, when we look at like how much we are spending on a claim in terms of legal costs, we will be able to use these techniques and say, hey, these are claims that are seeing some different type of behavior when it comes to certain costs, and somebody should take a look at it. And so we'll have these types of models help us do that. So these are just a couple of examples of like the type of modeling flavors we use. So just wanted to make sure that I share that with you to make it real, kind of the types of things that we are doing. If you go to the next slide, for the next.
So really quickly, Vishnu, you have a question from a participant if
Yeah.
I can interject really quickly. So the question, as I understand it, is what's the balance needed between using AI in underwriting and claims and avoiding the fraud that you talked about before as well with regard to payment of claims and things like that?
Yeah, for us, a lot of stuff we talk about is in a lot of what we do, we think about using AI as a mechanism to aid our underwriters and to aid our claims adjusters, right? So I work with underwriters and I work with claims folks, and the folks I work with, they've been doing this for a long time, and if I could basically take their brain and make it a machine, I would, right? But the even the best, even the most tenured claims adjuster has only looked at or has only managed, might say, I don't know, 10,000 or 20,000 claims in their career. They've seen the examples that they have seen based on a 20,000 set of claims. The models that we train have studied 5 million, 10 million claims, right? Imagine if you have the insight of working on 10 million claims and understanding everything about the 10 million claims and the expertise that comes with it, then that claims adjuster is just way more powerful than even the most experienced claims adjuster we have. And that's kind of how we always talk about it, is how do I harness the power of millions and millions of claims and millions of risks that we write, like hundreds of thousands of risks that we write if you're an underwriter, and take that insight at that scaled up level and bring it to the adjuster, bring it to the underwriter when they make a decision, so that they don't just rely on their experience that they have seen, but they can rely on the experience of the entire organization and how they can take advantage of that and use it in their decision making.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, Vishnu.
Yes.
Yeah, I also have a question. So I was actually an actuarial intern at Liberty this summer, and like one of my roles was to like text mine certain things in our claims data.
Uh-huh.
But I was like working in like hundreds of rows in like Excel. So I was using like Excel formulas to like identify certain trends. So I was just like curious if like I was curious like what your model like entails and like how exactly you built it from scratch, because obviously I was doing like dirty work, but
Yeah.
it was long because it was in Excel. So
Yeah.
obviously learning how you do this like in seconds, that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah, I talk about the third section here, natural language processing, that talks about all of that, right? So how we take all that information and do it. But in short, right? So that's kind of what you were talking about, David, is you're going through line by line for accident description or stuff that you have every line and searching for keywords and trying to find if it says, hey, does it say high-speed vehicle accident, right? That's a trigger for an expensive claim. So you try to look for that, and so we just make that into a giant process where instead of going Excel one line at a line item, line item by line item, we will say we will take, again, we'll use the workers' comp claims is one area where I have worked a lot in, where we will say, okay, let's look at, I don't know, 5 million claims and read every single piece of unstructured data there. And again, in this case, you might have gone to look for certain words because someone told you, hey, these are trigger words for expensive claims, or these are trigger words for fraud. We can tell the model, go back to the supervised or unsupervised learning methods to talk about. We can tell the model, hey, find me words that are associated mostly with expensive claims. And I don't have to tell the model, look for this word, look for that word. And the model will come back and tell us, hey, here's what I see is mostly associated with expensive claims. And we use that information to do modeling.
Awesome.
Okay, so you basically use like a secondary variable to identify what you're looking for.
We don't even use a secondary variable. We ask the model to find us those variables,
Okay.
which is the power of doing some interesting stuff.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'll talk more about it when we get to the natural language processing section. Cool. Just want to dive in on 3 areas where I think the cool areas where we've worked in, and I think it's stuff that is very interesting to give you some idea, some flavor of the challenges and the promises of AI and data science, especially when it comes to insurance. So I thought I'll share a few examples with you folks. If you go to the next slide, Van said, so we'll talk about big data. So I think Ken had mentioned it in the chat, right? So there is this concept that's a new thing that, I mean, not new, it's been around for a few years now, but we have this concept called usage-based insurance or telematics, if you've heard about it, right? So the whole thing, the idea is, can we understand and can we charge customers based on how much and how they use their vehicle, right? So today, the way you think about insurance is like you put in all the information, you basically get a price, and that's the price because you're guessing and saying, I think I'll drive about 5,000 miles this year, and based on that, and where you drive and how often you drive. So you're guessing, you put that information in, the models tell you the price, and you go forward. You can fast forward it to a place where we can understand how we can actually really look at exactly how much you're driving and where you're driving and when you're driving and how you're driving, and we can set prices based on that, right? So that's basically what's known as usage-based insurance. So the way it'll work is, I think for Liberty Mutual, we have something called right track program. I think like Progressive has a snapshot program. So the idea is we'll have a small device. Used to be a device, now I think you can use it from your phone itself when you're driving. The idea is we can get real-time information about usage of the vehicle, and based on that, we can charge the price for that customer. So that's what telematics / usage-based insurance is. But what you really see is this is not a very simple problem, right? So if you take, for example, if you have about 1 million, like if like Liberty Mutual as an example, let's say we have about 1 million customers who are using usage-based insurance, this product, and let's say they drive about 46 minutes per average per day. That's the average amount a person in US drives. And let's say all I am capturing is the speed. So basically I am trying to capture speed of the vehicle when the car is being driven. And we use a combination of GPS and vehicle sensor to calculate that. And the vehicle sensor and GPS basically capture this every second. So what you basically have is if you're driving for 46 minutes and I'm only capturing speed information, I have to capture the speed information every second of that 46 minutes. So then multiply that by 1 million vehicles, 1 million customers that are driving. What I get is just in a day, we have generated about 2.76 billion data points, right? Billion data points for one day, right? Now, we don't just calculate speed. We don't just capture speed. We capture a bunch of other information like acceleration, braking, location, and all of those things. And so we end up capturing over 100 variables at any given second. And so if you do the math, then what you end up with is about 1 trillion data points a year is how much we collect from about 1 million customers. So it is not easy to first of all, it's not easy to collect and store 1 trillion data points, much less then try to figure out how to interpret that data point and make sense from it when we start doing analysis. And we do a lot of different techniques to make sure that we can take all of that information and make it useful for our analytics purposes. If you go to the next slide, right? So it is, it's really complicated to take all of that information, but then at the same time, we need to understand the context and the environment, a context of the environment in which this data is created, right? So, for example, let's say I do calculate, we use the example of speed, right? So if you I capture the speed of the vehicle at every second, then we could use that and say, well, if someone is driving really fast, that's dangerous, so therefore we should give them like a surcharge them. And someone who's driving slow is good, therefore we should give them a discount. Well, driving 65 in a highway versus driving 65 in a urban residential neighborhood is very different, right? So you have to then understand, okay, we have to not just understand the speed, but we need to understand the speed and the context of the environment and making sure that we take that into account. So what then the GPS, so that's a problem. And the second problem we'll also face is the GPS data that we get usually has like a 20-meter radius of like accuracy. So if you're going on a highway and if I see that the vehicle is traveling at like 75 miles an hour and it's a 20-meter radius, then I'm not really sure if that car is in the highway or in the access road right by the highway, right? So then now I have to be careful. So if somebody is traveling at 75 miles and 65 miles in the highway, that's okay. But if they're driving that speed in the access road or in the road that is slightly off to the frontage road right next to the highway, then that's a problem because that's certainly over speed limit. And so those are kinds of things we have to really solve for before we start thinking about how to use this information. And this is something that is incredibly hard. There's lots of different algorithms that we try. There's tons of research that's out there that we'll go read and understand to say, okay, so what is the best way for us to take all of this information? How do we then understand the environment and the context around it, and then make sure that we fix some of the issues that we might see in the data, and then use it to understand, okay, who is a good driver and who is a risky driver, and therefore think about charging different rates based on that. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, we'll talk next about computer vision. This is another area that is super growing and popular, right? So what computer vision, I talk about computer vision and aerial imagery in a couple of like two different things, but I think about it in the same way. The idea here is how can I as an insurance company take pictures and take images in whatever shape and form they come in, and use that for making better decisions, be it the underwriting side, be it the claim side, be it the pricing side, whatever it is, right? So you can think of a lot of different use cases where you could use images and think about building AI, using AI to understand these images and making better decisions and getting better outcomes in our insurance process. Examples include like inspections, right? So when we go do inspections of properties, or when we're trying to do inspections of properties, we can use aerial imagery and like pictures of buildings to understand, hey, how should we think about like which ones should we go inspect, which buildings should we go inspect, which buildings we don't have to go inspect. Underwriting, again, and assessing, understanding the risk, it's really important. Data accuracy, sometimes information that we will get in a submission might not match with what we see in real world when we go get the pictures from it. So a lot of examples here about how we can use images, how we can use AI techniques on top of these images to get better decision making from our insurance professionals that are doing different tasks here. I'll talk about a couple of examples in the next slide. One example is, and we'll talk with the aerial imagery initiative. So this one is basically what we do is we have, I think there's a collection of insurance companies that have signed up for this, and this might be actually changing now. So we use drones to basically cover pretty much most of US and get pictures of pretty much all the areas, commercial buildings and whatnot. We get like a high resolution images, ultra high resolution images. And so we have all of this information, and we can use this information for a lot of different purposes. We use it for risk selection purposes, in the sense that if I am going to insure a property, a commercial property, and then we'll get images above from that looking down, like the drone images, where we can understand kind of what is on the building, right? So if a building has skylights and HVAC units and solar panels on the roof, then I have to be careful, because that is susceptible to wind damage, and therefore I need to make that conclusion and include that in my pricing and say, hey, because of these characteristics, then this is extra risk, and therefore I need to do certain things to either account for it or go talk to that client and say, hey, here are some risk mitigation things you need to do so that your property is not, when it damage, it's not going to be too expensive, right? So that's one application of how we use aerial imagery. The second one is on the claim side, right? So we all know about the impact hurricanes have in property damage. So for us, like, we look at again the drone footage that we get, right? We can look at images of properties pre and post hurricane or severe weather events, and actually have an understanding of how much damage should we be expecting, and actually have a good sense of what are the claims, how many claims we should be getting even before the claims are filed, so that we are ready for these events and take appropriate actions and preparations before these things can impact and our customers are calling us. So like we try to get ready for this ahead of time by using lots of different tools we have that monitor and study these images, and we have multiple programs like AI algorithms that we've developed that look at pre-post, like pre-tornado, pre-hurricane images with the post images to see the damage, assess the damage, and use that information to better manage a claim. All right. To go to the, again, this is another example, right? So one of the things we do is image classification, object detection, so claims. So we talk about like when like typically, my husband was recently in a minor car accident, I'd say 7 months ago. So the process usually is, you get into an accident, you call your insurance company and say, hey, XY, this is what happened. You file, then they'll say, oh, what happened? Then you give them the description, they type it up, and then they'll say, go take it to the body shop, blah, blah, blah. Like you go through the process, which is very manual, time consuming, text intensive, like you're telling the information back and forth. There are now technology available where I think some insurance, we use it, some other insurance companies also use it, where you can basically get an accident, take a photo, upload the photo through your app to your customer, to your insurance company. The AI will tell you, okay, so I see the damage, I understand all the parts that are damaged, and then it can either route you to the right place, or sometimes it might even recommend to say, hey, this car is totaled, I need you to take this to this salvage yard, and we will send you a check for the replacement value of this vehicle, right? So you can automate this whole process for a large chunk of the types of claims we get. And so that's another thing that and a lot of people have been looking at.
Awesome. Looks like you have another question in the chat from Myron. It asks, are you using this technology now with respect to the wildfires in Hawaii or the regional flooding in Massachusetts? And thank you.
I am not in the personal line side, so I can't say for a fact, but certainly these are the types of things we are using. I don't know for the exact specific event, but these are certainly the types of technology we are using for natural catastrophe events that you were like similar to the ones you're talking about, Myron. So this is exactly where we would be using that.
Awesome. Thank you. Great question.
All right. Next is natural language processing. I mean, this is a field that's just been incredibly growing in popularity over the last several years. If you look at the field of AI, one of the most explosive growth has been in the field of language and understanding human language. It's also been the hardest one from an AI and data science perspective. So that's where people are making a lot of strides in, and we are incredibly excited about the future in this space, right? So a lot of the information that we get today is as what you see here, like LLM here stands for large language model. That's another word, like a phrase that you can think of for basically natural language processing or AI, language related AI. Tons of different use cases, everything from marketing to underwriting, claims, service, legal. Everything has a lot of things that we could do, and these are just examples of things that we have done using natural language processing. If you go to the next slide, I can walk you through examples of why this is important, why this is big for us, right? So the data, when you think about data, I think of data in like two different formats, structured data and unstructured data. Structured data is, they think of it as an Excel spreadsheet with numbers and codes written in, which is neat and clean and organized. That to me is structured data. Unstructured data to me is a lot of things that is free form text, right? Emails, letters, phone calls, voice recordings, police reports, letters from lawyers, court documents. All of those things are what I would consider unstructured data. And unstructured data is growing at a much faster rate than structured data. And structured data is also growing, don't get me wrong, but unstructured data is just growing at a much faster rate. And so it's really important for us to understand unstructured data and not just make sense of it, but to be able to, at scale, get insights from it is really critical. And to the technology and techniques that are available today, even 5 years ago, like there are certain things that we couldn't do that we can do today, which makes this field an incredibly exciting place for us to be. To go to the next slide. So I'll talk about some of these things, right? So again, as I said, I work in claims and as in commercial claims, and commercial claims are what we call long-tailed claims, which means that these claims can be open for years, sometimes decades. And so to understand the claim, a lot of information about the claim is always in unstructured format, and you can't just rely on like a nice, neat little table about the claim. And so what we've been doing is experimenting with a lot of new techniques, like to tell you how much the technology has advanced. I made this slide, God, 6 or 7 months ago when GPT-2 was the thing that everybody was using. We are now up to GPT-4. These models are just getting so powerful, so good, that we can use all of these techniques. We can take that information and we can use sorry, take these models and use it with the vast amount of information that we have that is unstructured data. To give you an example, or to give you a magnitude, there is one source of data that we look at, which is claim notes. The idea is basically, think of it as a diary that our claim adjusters keep as they manage the claim. So they basically update this on a daily basis, monthly basis, whenever they're working on a claim. If I just take a look at the claim notes we have, and if I just take all the claim notes we have, and if I printed them all out, that's about 73 million pages of single spaced, like A4 paper. Like that is the amount of, like if you had a book that is 74 million pages, like that is the amount of data that is there. And that's just one source, right? Then you have like third-party data sources, public data sources. You take all of these things, combine them, and then what you see is the new generation models that we build. That's the graph that you see on the right-hand side, right? The new generation models that we build are just, performance is just orders of magnitude better than anything that we have seen before. Like we had a model that we had built, got back in 2012, way before I was even at Liberty, that was state of the art back then, that had a certain performance, and it's still a very good solid model, but the things that have changed so much around it from a technology and data perspective, that the new model that we have is like 5-6 times better, not 5% or 6%, 5 times, 6 times better than what we had even like 6 or 7 years ago, which tells you like how much this tech is getting better, which then helps us like use it for our advantage, like use it to make sure that we are managing our claims properly, settling our claims sooner so that our customers can go back to doing what they need to do, just to run their business, selecting the right clients for us to work with. And all of these problems are like better, like we can solve these problems better because we have now access to these kinds of techniques that are just incredibly powerful. If you go to the next slide, this is I believe this is my last slide. And again, if you have read the news in the last, I don't know, 6 months, you probably have heard about ChatGPT. And this is the new class of models, right? So the stuff that is available today is it's only getting better and better and better. So transformative, so we've got this generative transformers. That's what GPT stands for, generative pre-trained transformers. Some people call it Gen AI. The biggest achievement, which is, if you guys don't know about it, or like indulge me in geeking out a little bit, the reason why this is insane in my mind is, up until now, we have been struggling to teach the machines to understand human language. And understanding human language is not easy, right? Different people talk differently. People use different words to say the same thing. Same word means different things. It's very complicated. It is not easy. I have a 5-year-old, like I have a 3-year-old who's like learning English, and like the way I see them, like what do you mean by this and that? Like the certain words mean the same thing. Like different people use different words to mean the same thing, and they get confused by that. And a computer is much, much, much simpler than a human brain. We have not only figured out how to teach the computer to understand human language, these models have figured out how to talk back to us like human, which is the reason why they're called generative. They're generative because they generate language like a human, which is a order of magnitude higher level of complexity than just understanding human language. And so these models can do that. Like these models are trained on 3.6 trillion words. That is basically almost every book available out on the internet. The model has learned, the model has been trained on. If I were to, and these are like big companies building these models, and it's is available for us, and like we get to use it. I always joke about it to the underwriters and the claims people I work with, that like never in my career that I have been in a place where the thing I am working on is the coolest thing that newspapers are writing about and people are talking about, which is an awesome place to be. And it's a very revolutionary thing. There's a lot of things we have to figure out, but the promise is exciting. And at Liberty, we get to use all of these things to figure out how to make it really better for the people in the front line who are doing the work, like our marketing folks, our underwriters, our distribution folks, our claims folks. So anyway, so that's the end of my talk. I know we have 8 minutes left, so happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. We'll give folks a minute to think about questions. You can use raise your hand feature. You can drop it in the chat. I'll give you a couple of my quick takeaways from today's session. Text changing the game. You talked about full value chain from the standpoint of pricing and underwriting through claims and kind of back end stuff as well. I think you anticipate that companies are going to have lots of data, especially unstructured data, but being able to manage it strategically is key. You do have another question in the chat from Myron. What do you perceive will be the pros and cons of AI in the RMI industry, especially with respect to employment? Great question.
My take is that these techniques and technologies help us become more efficient and effective, right? So I work with folks who spend time reading documents, wading through like different pieces of a contract to get at to compare 3 different documents, figure out like what has changed between this last year's contract and this year's contract. The model can do that. Once the model can do that, then the underwriter can say, okay, great, this is what has changed. Therefore, now this is what my action is going to be, right? So to me, this is a huge efficiency play where I can speed up the problems, the speed up the work that our underwriters can do so that they can focus on what they do best. And to me, this is a lot of things like, how do I arm them with more better information and insights? And that's what these models allow us to do.
Fantastic. Very well said. Okay, so Amanda has a follow-up. What are your thoughts on privacy and compliance concerns? Are regulations changing with regard to technology?
Absolutely, right. So this is not like we work very closely with our privacy team. We have a whole team that I work very closely with, and it's definitely concerned, right? We have to be careful. This is not something we go do willy-nilly. We have processes in place, we have controls in place. When we build models with this unstructured data, we do a lot of work trying to make sure that we remove private information, we remove non-public information about the company, about the person, all of that information from our training set, so that we don't create biased models, right? So if you the garbage in, garbage out, right? If the model is trained on bad data, then it's going to say the wrong things. So we spend a lot of time to make sure that that data that we are feeding into the models is not biased, doesn't have things that it doesn't need to have. Obviously, regulations wise, we make sure that we are one step above kind of where we need to be from a like extra safety that we think we need to do. We think it's prudent before we do it. So that's typically how we've always approach these things, right? So the technology regulations are obviously going to change, and we always keep track of it. Like we can't, for example, like we have very strict controls in place about models, like so the GPT model, like the OpenAI's, the GPT-4 that we talked about, like we can't just take that willy-nilly. There's and use it within Liberty as well today. Like we have a responsible AI governance committee that's actually led by our chief legal officer and our chief information officer. So they are involved in kind of how we think about responsible AI and what use cases we are trying, how do we use it, when do we use it. All of that is very carefully thought about to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Awesome. We're going to do one more question, and then what I'll do is I'll wrap. I'll stop the recording, and if folks want to stay on and ask a couple more questions, if Vishnu and Jose have time, we can do that. Last question is, what do you recommend that we read in order to stay current with data science developments, whether it's Risk and Insurance Journal, Insurance Business Magazine, podcast, TED Talks, things like that?
That is a good question. I will have to get back to you on that one. I know there are a bunch of podcasts that I can't keep. It doesn't come to my mind very quickly. There are certainly a bunch of podcasts that I would highly recommend. There's a couple of AI folks that write extensively on LinkedIn. So let me collect that information and I will share that with Ken, and he can hopefully share that with you all.
Awesome. That sounds great. Vishnu and Jose, thank you so much for supporting today's session. We talk a lot about next-gen talent. Today was really about next-gen innovation and what's going on in the industry. It's great to see that Liberty Mutual is ahead of the curve, so we appreciate your time. For the folks that are going to join next week, on August 17th, we will run from 1 to 2. Another one of our partners, FM Global, will be here, more focused on career fair preparation. So really practically, how do I go to a fair? How do I engage? How do I take advantage of the different opportunities that are there? So thank you so much. We will see you guys next time. Great job.